He was asleep next to me on the couch. It had happened a dozen times, but this was different. As the city lights washed over his face, a thought hit me so hard I felt it. Our entire life together had been a lie. A beautiful, comfortable, platonic lie that I suddenly couldn't live for one more day. To get it, you have to know how things were before that night. You have to understand the rhythm of our life, the easy, unspoken language of a friendship that had become the foundation of my world. Alex and I weren't just roommates. We were a unit. A two-man team against the chaos of your mid-20s. Our place was a third-floor walk-up in a neighborhood that was always buzzing. The building was old, with pipes that groaned every morning and floors that sloped just enough to make you feel a little off balance after a few beers. But it was ours. It was our sanctuary, a mix of his minimalist, clean-lined furniture and my chaotic mess of second-hand books and dying houseplants. Our mornings were a silent deal. I was always up first, stumbling into the kitchen at 6:30 blind to make a pot of coffee strong enough to strip paint. I'd leave a mug on the counter for him, black, 2 sugars, and he'd show up an hour later, hair a wreck, mumbling thanks as he shuffled to the shower. The sound of his off-key humming mixed with the hiss of the water was the soundtrack to my breakfast. There was a comfort in it, a predictability that felt like a warm blanket. We worked in different worlds. I was a graphic designer stuck at a desk downtown. He was a chef at a busy Italian restaurant, his life run by the dinner rush. Our schedules were total opposites, like ships passing in the night. Most days I'd come home to an empty apartment, the quiet a huge contrast to the noise of my office. I'd eat dinner alone, usually leftovers from whatever amazing meal he'd cooked up the night before, and crash on the couch. But then, around 11, the key would turn in the lock, and the apartment would come to life. Alex would spill into the living room smelling of garlic, basil, and the faint, satisfying scent of a wood-fired oven. He'd be exhausted, but his eyes would be bright, electric with the kitchen's energy. He'd drop his bag, kick off his worn-out clogs, and just collapse onto the other end of the couch with a sigh that seemed to release the entire day. "Tell me something good," he'd say, every single night. It was our thing, and I would. I'd tell him about a funny email from work, a weird conversation I overheard on the train, a new dog I saw in the park, nothing huge, just something. And he would listen, really listen, head tilted, a little smile on his lips. Then it was his turn. He'd complain about a picky customer, praise a new line cook, or describe a dish he was perfecting in such vivid detail I could almost taste it. These weren't just talks. They were how we stitched our separate days together. We were each other's anchor. When I went through a rough breakup, he was the one who deleted my ex's number from my phone, ordered 3 large pizzas, and just sat with me while I cried. He didn't say a word, just offered a silent, solid presence. When his dad was in the hospital, I was the one who drove him the 3 hours home, sat in the waiting room with him, and made sure he ate. Our friendship was built on 1,000 tiny moments that, all woven together, created a bond stronger than any I'd ever known. It was the easy banter over who was better at Mario Kart, me, obviously. It was the nights on the fire escape, sharing cheap wine and talking about our dreams and our fears. It was the comfortable silences, just being in the same room without any pressure. He was, in the simplest and biggest way, my person, my brother. The one constant in a life that felt like it was spinning out of control. The idea of anything more, of any feeling deeper than that pure, platonic love, wasn't just missing from my mind, it was impossible. It was a language I didn't speak. Our dynamic was perfect, safe, uncomplicated, and I had never, not for a single second, wanted anything to change. The night everything changed started like any other Friday. Alex had a rare night off, so we decided to celebrate by doing absolutely nothing. We ordered greasy Chinese food in the little white boxes, the kind that makes you feel both happy and a little ashamed. We opened a couple of beers and sprawled on our worn-out, comfy couch to binge some mindless action movie we'd both seen 100 times. The air was thick with our usual easy friendship. We laughed at the cheesy one-liners and argued about plot holes. As the movie hit its climax, we fell into a comfortable silence. The beer, the food, the late hour, it all started to hit me. My eyelids felt like lead. I remember my head nodding forward once or twice and Alex chuckling softly next to me. "Getting old, man," he mumbled, his own voice thick with sleep. "Never," I shot back, trying to sound more awake than I was. At some point, the credits rolled and the TV went dark, leaving the room in a soft gloom. The only light came from the huge window overlooking the city, a galaxy of amber and white lights pulsing like a living thing. I should have gotten up. Should have said goodnight, gone to my own bed, and let the night end like always. But I didn't. The couch was too comfortable. The silence was too peaceful. I must have dozed off. When I blinked my eyes open again, I realized Alex was completely out. Not just dozing, deeply asleep. His head had slumped to the side, his body angled toward me. His usual guarded look was gone, replaced by a vulnerability so raw it almost hurt to look. And then it happened. The spark, the shift, the moment that split my life into before and after. City lights spilled over him, tracing his jawline, catching the stubble on his chin, lighting up the relaxed curve of his lips. His breathing was slow and even. I'd seen him sleep before, of course. We were roommates. But this wasn't a passing glance. This was a study. I noticed the way a piece of his dark hair fell across his forehead. The tiny, faded scar above his eyebrow from a childhood accident he told me about. The gentle rise and fall of his chest. I knew these details, but suddenly I was seeing them. And as I watched him, a feeling started to bloom in my chest. A warm, terrifying, and totally unfamiliar ache. It wasn't just admiration. It wasn't friendship. It was something else. Something that hit a chord inside me I never knew existed. The thought that followed wasn't a whisper. It was a roar. Oh, that was it. Just oh, And in that one silent word, my whole world fell apart. Every inside joke, every shared meal, every late-night talk was suddenly cast in a new, terrifying light. It was like I'd been living in black and white, and someone had just flipped a switch, flooding everything with blinding color. The platonic life we had built, the easy, brotherly dynamic I loved so much, suddenly felt like a lie. Not a mean lie, but a lie of omission. A truth I had been hiding from myself. This feeling, this heart-stopping, world-altering feeling, hadn't just shown up out of nowhere. It had been there all along, hiding in the quiet moments, waiting for a chance to finally break through. I just sat there, frozen, my heart hammering against my ribs. He was inches away, totally oblivious, breathing softly in the city glow. And I was having an epiphany that was shattering me. The fear was instant and overwhelming. Fear of what this meant, fear of losing him, fear of wrecking the single most important relationship in my life. Because in that moment, I knew with a certainty that chilled me to the bone that I was in love with my roommate, my best friend. And nothing would ever be the same. Waking up the next morning was like surfacing from a deep, rough dream. For a split second, everything was normal. Sun streamed through my window, the pipes groaned in the bathroom, and the smell of coffee was already in the air. Then, the memory of last night crashed down on me. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my heart already pounding. Every single interaction from now on was going to be a minefield. Every glance, every word was now charged with a tension only I could feel. It was like I'd been given a secret script, but Alex was still winging it from the old one. I finally dragged myself into the kitchen. He was there, leaning against the counter, scrolling on his phone, looking exactly the same as always. But to me, he was a different person. He was the man I was in love with. "Morning," he grunted, not looking up. "Morning," I squeaked back, my voice an octave too high. I cleared my throat and poured a coffee, my hand shaking so slightly I prayed he wouldn't see. The once comfortable silence now felt deafening, filled with all the things I was screaming inside. Did I look at him too long, stand too close? Did he notice my breath hitch when he laughed at his screen? It was torture. The next few days were a masterclass in awkward. I started avoiding him. It was cowardly and ridiculous in a 2-bedroom apartment, but I couldn't help it. I'd come home and go straight to my room, claiming a headache or a deadline. I ate dinner at my desk. About a week later, he knocked on my door. "Hey, you okay, man?" he asked, his voice full of genuine concern. "You've been weird all week." "I'm fine," I lied, my back to him, pretending to be busy. "Just stressed." "Okay," he said slowly, clearly not buying it. "Well, I made that carbonara you like. There's a plate for you on the stove." The gesture, so simple and so him, felt like a punch to the gut. It was a reminder of everything I could lose. Guilt washed over me. I was pushing him away and it was hurting him. I decided to try acting normal. But my normal was a train wreck. I overcompensated. I laughed too loud at his jokes, suggested we hang out constantly. One night we were on the couch again. It was a thriller, and during a jump scare, I flinched and my hand brushed his. A jolt, like an electric shock, shot up my arm. I snatched my hand back like I'd been burned. "Whoa, you good?" Alex asked, looking at me confused. "Yeah, sorry, static," I mumbled, my face on fire. For the rest of the movie, I sat ramrod straight, my hands tucked under my legs, my whole body buzzing with nervous energy. The voice in my head was relentless. Every time he'd walk out of his room shirtless after a shower, a towel slung low on his hips, I'd have to physically turn away, my mind screaming, "Act normal, don't stare, don't let him see asterisk." Every time he'd clap me on the shoulder, my skin would tingle for hours. The worst part was the fear of being caught. I was paranoid, convinced he could read my mind. Did he see the way my eyes lingered on his mouth when he talked? Did he notice I remembered tiny details from conversations we'd had months ago? I was on high alert 24/7, terrified of giving myself away. The tension finally boiled over on a rainy Tuesday. I had a nasty cold and had spent the day in bed, a pathetic, shivering mess. I was almost relieved Alex was at work so I didn't have to perform. That evening I heard his key in the lock. I tensed up. A few moments later, my bedroom door creaked open. "Hey," he said softly. "Heard you were sick. Need anything?" "Fine," I rasped. He ignored me and flipped on my lamp. He was holding a steaming bowl. "Brought you some soup," he said, setting it on my nightstand. His signature chicken noodle soup, the one he only made from scratch when someone was really sick. Then he did something that completely broke me. He sat on the edge of my bed, reached out and pressed the back of his hand to my forehead. His touch was cool and gentle. My whole body went rigid. The concern in his eyes was so genuine, so tender, it felt like my heart was going to crack open. "Burning up," he said, his voice low. He was so close. The smell of rain on his jacket, the warmth of his hand, the kindness in his face, it was too much. All the tension, all the fear, all the pent-up feelings from the past few weeks rose up in me like a tidal wave. I didn't plan it. My hand came up and covered his, pressing his palm flat against my cheek. I just wanted to feel that connection for one more second. I closed my eyes as a single tear escaped, tracing a hot path down my temple. When I opened them, his expression had changed. The concern was still there, but mixed with something else. Confusion, and something deeper I couldn't name. He didn't pull his hand away. He just sat there looking at me, the silence stretching on forever. And in that silence, I knew the secret was out. The lie was over. He finally broke the silence, his voice barely a whisper. "Leo, what's going on?" My heart just dropped. This was it, the moment of truth. My throat felt tight, and for a second I thought I was going to be sick. I pulled my hand back, and he let his fall away. The loss of his touch hurt. I pushed myself up against the headboard, the blankets pooled around my waist. I couldn't look at him. I just stared at a crack in the wall opposite me. I don't know," I stammered. It was the weakest lie yet. "Do that," he said, his voice firm but not angry. "Don't shut me out. I'm your best friend. You've been acting like a ghost in our own apartment for weeks. Talk to me." Asterisk best friend. The words twisted the knife. That was the role I was supposed to be playing, and I had failed spectacularly. I took a shaky breath. I had two choices, lie my way out of it or just jump off the cliff and pray it wasn't a total wreck at the bottom. "It's you," I whispered, so quiet I wasn't sure he heard me. I risked a look. He was staring at me, brow furrowed, his face impossible to read. "It's me," he repeated. "What about me?" Tears started to well up in my eyes, hot and shameful. "Everything," I said, my voice cracking. "It's all about you." I finally met his eyes and just let him see everything, the fear, the desperation, the terrifying, all-consuming thing I felt for him. A few weeks ago, I started, my voice getting a little stronger. That Friday night watching that stupid movie, you fell asleep on the couch, and I don't know. The light was hitting you, and I really saw you. Not as my roommate, not as my friend. I saw you. And it was like my whole world just tilted. I paused, searching his face for anger, disgust, anything. But there was nothing, just an intense, focused stillness. I realized, I went on, the words tumbling out now, that our whole friendship, it felt like a lie, because what I feel for you isn't simple, it isn't platonic. And it scares the hell out of me, Alex, because you're the most important person in my life, and I think I'm in love with you, and I am so sorry. The last words came out as a sob. I dropped my head into my hands, bracing for the rejection, for the awkward conversation about moving out, for the end of everything. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I'd ever heard. Then I felt the bed shift. I felt his hand, hesitant at first, on my back, rubbing small circles. "Leo," he said, his voice thick with some emotion I couldn't place. "Look at me." Slowly, I lifted my head. His face was just inches from mine, and the look I saw wasn't anger or disgust. It was a mirror of my own turmoil, my own fear. "You think you're the only one who's been lying?" he asked softly, my breath caught. "You think I haven't noticed?" He went on, a sad, knowing smile on his lips. "That tension, that something, that's been crackling between us for months, maybe years." He shook his head, his eyes searching mine. "That night on the couch, I wasn't fully asleep, Leo, not at first. I felt you watching me, and I was too scared to open my eyes. Because I think I knew what I would see, and I knew if I saw it, I couldn't ignore what I've been feeling either." He reached up and wiped a tear from my cheek with his thumb. "You're an idiot," he whispered, but his tone was fond. "A blind idiot if you think this is a one-way street. I've been falling for you so slowly I didn't even realize it was happening, until I was terrified I was about to lose you." My mind couldn't keep up. It felt like the ground, which had been crumbling under me, was suddenly solid again. I started, but I couldn't finish the thought. He closed the small distance between us. His lips met mine, and it wasn't a fireworks movie magic kiss. It was soft, hesitant, questioning. It tasted of salt from my tears and the unspoken fears of two best friends who had just risked everything. It was a kiss that felt like a confession, a pardon, and a promise all at once. When he pulled back, he rested his forehead against mine. We just breathed. "So," he whispered, a real, dazzling smile finally breaking through. "The carbonara is probably cold." Let out a choked laugh, a sound of pure relief. The fever, the sickness, the weeks of agony, it all just melted away, replaced by a warmth that had nothing to do with my cold and everything to do with the man in front of me. The days and weeks that followed were a gentle unfolding. There was some initial awkwardness, for sure. A sweet, fumbling dance into this new territory. How do you go from arguing about whose turn it is to take out the trash to holding hands on the couch? How do you switch from brotherly hugs to lingering kisses in the kitchen? But that awkwardness was beautiful. It was like learning a new language together, one sentence at a time. It turned out that the foundation we'd built as friends, the trust, the respect, the deep, unconditional care, was the perfect ground to build a relationship on. All the little things that had defined our platonic life were still there. The coffee in the morning, the late-night talks, the comfortable silences. But now, they felt deeper. They were no longer just acts of friendship. They were acts of love. Looking back, that night on the couch wasn't the moment I fell for him. It was just the moment I let myself see the truth that was right in front of me all along. Our life together hadn't been a lie. It was just the first chapter of a story we were only just beginning to write. He was still my roommate, still my best friend. But now, he was also the person I get to love, out in the open, with my whole heart. And I wouldn't change a thing. If you've ever had a single moment that changed a friendship forever, I'd love to hear your story in the comments. Every love story is unique, and sharing them is a great reminder that we're not alone on these crazy, unpredictable journeys. If you enjoyed this, please consider subscribing for more stories. Thanks for listening.